Hello, my name is Zuleika Gerrish, and I am a jewellery historian and co-founder of Parkin Gerrish, where we specialise in antique and vintage jewels with a story. I've been following this extraordinary event closely, not just as a historian, but as someone who believes that jewels are living witness to history. And if, like me, you love history, the human stories, the craftsmanship, the echoes of past lives, then you'll probably find that this house is as fascinating and as heartbreaking as I do. So today I want to take you through what happened during the Louvre Heist, the pieces that were taken, and why the jewels, beyond their value, matter so deeply to France's culture identity. Before I begin, I should say I've done my very best to ensure the accuracy of everything you see and hear today. This story is evolving quickly, so if I've made any small error or any new information has come to light, I apologize in advance, and I'm very happy to be corrected afterwards. This includes my terrible French pronunciation. Even my English is not that great. So yeah, I speak Froglish. um, Paris is a city I love. I mean, I've been going there for every year. My husband and I tend to go in December and January, and we absolutely just love it. And at the heart stands the Louvre, which is the most visited museum in the world. It last year alone welcomed 8.7 million visitors. Which is more than double what its structure and system was ever designed to handle. And this tells us two things. One, the world's appetite for culture and history is immense. And second is the same passion brings new pressures. So not just on the arts and artifacts themselves, but on the protection, on preserving treasure, and like the jewels, which we'll be exploring today. So this is the crime scene, but is also the Gallery of Apollo, one of the most magnificent rooms in the Louvre. It was originally designed for Louis XIV, the Sun King, and later rebuilt after a fire in the 17th century by the architecture Felix Dubin. The gallery is a masterpiece of French Baroque art, gilded ceilings. You've got painted wonderful things of Apollo and the arts. And crucially, this is the crown jewels of France are displayed. It's extraordinary space, part royal hall and part national treasury, and the crime scene of our house. Um, the jewels were taken from these very display cases in the room 705 within the Dudon ring, which is also where Mona Lisa is just one floor below. And a busy day, more than 25,000 people will pass through this wing, which gives you an idea of how public and yet how vulnerable these displays were. The museum covers more than 60,000 square meters of exhibition spaces and spreads across three main rings. You've got the Dunon, Sully, and the Richelieu. The gallery sits up high along the river facing side, which is why the theft is so bold. The thieves did not break into a vault underground, they just climbed up the ladder, walked into a walked in and pretty much walked out, which is just absolutely extraordinary. And so here is the crime scene outside. So let's start. So this was Sunday morning, 19th of October 2025, a calm autumn day in Paris. France is still, in many ways, a Catholic country. And on Sunday morning, are slow and hushed. The church bells are echoing over the Seine. You've got the cafes that are just opening, and the Louvre, which opened at 9, has just beginning to fill with visitors. Around 9:30, just as the glass pyramid about to glint in the sunlight, two men arrives outside the ring on the south side, which you can see here. So it's the Didon ring at the building, and with a cherry mounted cherry picker. So this is a sort of truck with a large ladder, and two men start laying out traffic cones, wearing very high visible jackets. Nothing unusual, since the Louvre is currently undergoing extensive restoration work. President Macron announced the 700 to 800 million euros Nouvelle Renaissance restoration plan in January earlier this year. And it's a vast program running until 2031 to transform the museum's entrance, galleries, and ironically security systems. So the site of maintenance workers is nothing out of ordinary. I should also add, it's not out of ordinary to see these cherry pickers in Paris either, because if you've been to Paris, a lot of people live up in these very high buildings, and in order to get furniture in and out when they're moving, etc., these trucks are quite common. And there was a truck that was stolen a couple of weeks ago, and whether it's the same one, that is also possible. But what was unusual was they were wearing balaclavas. The CCTV pointed in the wrong way, missed the moment they were forced to open a high window, leading straight into the Gallery of Apollo itself. And once inside, they moved with astonishing precision. And just under 7 minutes, they cut through 2 display cases, removed 8 roll jewels, and escaped the same way they came in. The window alarm did trigger, but the guards, prioritizing visitors' safety, couldn't approach, and one theft reportedly was brandished a tool like a weapon. And then in full daylight, they calmly descended the lift and tried and failed to set fire to their truck and drove off into the city. 7 minutes, and this heist is over. And it is rather extraordinary because I've just been talking for 7 minutes. That is how quick it happened. And here is a video of them, moving down. It's just rather extraordinary. So in the hours and days following, a clearer pictures began to emerge, piecing together from the CCTV, eyewitness clips, and police investigation. There was over 100 detectives currently looking at this as well. And one security guard remarkably even filmed the men, which is what you've just seen in broad daylight, tool in hand, seen straight out of the Pink Panther. It's just absolutely extraordinary. But here's what we know. So at 9:30, 2 men arrived on the Seine side of the Denon Ring in a 9-foot vertical lift. Their high-res jackets and cones set out, not suspicious, and ongoing reservation. The windows breached, slit cut on the first door of the Gallery Apollo window using a circular sword. Once inside, they go straight to 2 glass cases, cut through laminated glass, and threaten visitors to keep distance. At 9:37, 7 minutes later, they exit the same way. Eugénie's crown is dropped, later recovered, damaged. And when they descend, they tried to light up the truck and then flee on 2 Yamaha T-Max scooters towards the A6. Total time 7 minutes. And why it only worked is this sort of one camera was covered the facade. So when we go back to this picture, you can see, and it was facing the wrong direction. So staff prioritized the safety before interfering. But what was interesting is they have found 150 forensic traces collected from a helmet, a blowtorch, walkie-talkie, high-res jacket, and a blanket. There are also digital evidence which suggests inside help. A security guard is currently under investigation. And then, of course, there is a lot of CCTV and private footage trace the escape across Paris and suburbs. So, and one people say about the police not being there, the police were actually on site within 3 minutes of the alarm, and the alarm set off when they cut the glass of the windows. So it did work. Just unfortunately, they didn't get them in time. So And they have also arrested two men in their 30s, have been detained. One was arrested at the Paris airport and on the route to Algeria, and the other one was preparing to leave to Mali. They've been identified by DNA matches, so it's quite interesting, but we still don't know where the jewelry is, so watch this space. So before I begin and talking about it, I wanted to talk about why this is the largest cultural manhunt in modern French history, but also let's talk about the display cases because a lot of conspiracy theories out there, and I just wanted to correct something. So the picture on the top left is 1880, and the rest are taken between, well, most of these pictures are from the sort of 90s to noughties, but basically these display cases are being used since the 1950s to 2019. So before 2019, the Louvre jewels were kept in a series of older display systems dating back to the 1950s. The earliest case were designed with the most extraordinary ingenious. The trays actually descended automatically into the safe below the floor. So when the museum was closed at night, it was a brilliant idea for security. However, not for the jewelry, because the vibrations and sudden drop began risking damaging the gemstones. So in the 1980s, a new mechanism was introduced with timed razors and falls, but it too became unreliable. And by the 2000s, those cases were no longer considered safe for the jewels. And so what happened in 2019 is the Louvre replaced all the jewelry cases with a new system with the help of Cartier. So good old Cartier. They combined modern glass engineering and obviously just a very pleasing simplicity. I personally prefer the old ones, but I guess this is, more modern. And what is interesting is these cases are completely fixed and not retractable. They are made of complete ultra-resistant laminated glass. Now, this bit is interesting because on the day of the theft, what I've been told and understand is that these thieves didn't smash them outright. According to the Louvre's internal footage, they used swords and cutting tools to slit a narrow slit through the glass, but it didn't shatter or break. And one thief rammed the panel with his shoulder and used a hidden tool to try and pry it open. But just enough to just slip one hand in. As for the previous cases, would have been easier to break. So actually, the whole theory about they did do their job, just they had the right tools with them. But he could only just get one hand in. So what's interesting about that, it explains why certain things like one earring was only taken or from the sapphire, Peru, things like that. It's just, but and also there's an understanding that the crown might have got damaged this way also when it got pulled out. The point I'm making is the glass actually did prevent much greater loss. They could only reach the jewels that were closest to the opening, and so and also there was two men and one with a UV jacket and one not. And the point is the one who didn't have a UV jacket apparently struggled, and the one with the UV jacket managed to get some things, and then he had to help the other man because he was really struggling. So very all fast paced, but they kind of succeeded in one moment. So what was taken in 4 minutes inside, the thieves managed to remove 8 royal jewels from the Galerie Apollo, leaving the rest untouched. The piece spanned 2 centuries of French royal history, from pre-Napoleon and mainly Napoleon Emperor, first and second Emperor, once belonging to the Queen and Empress of France. They targeted 2 display cases and they took to sapphire Peru, one tiara, a necklace, and 1 single earring. They actually also dropped the brooch. They were trying to get the brooch, but he couldn't quite get it. And when you realize where they were all displayed, it makes complete sense. So and they took the emerald necklace and earring. They took a diamond bow brooch and another diamond brooch. And finally, Eugenie's crown, which is the one that did get later recovered outside. It's damaged by the shattered glass, very likely, but we don't know the extent of the damage. Together, they represent a reported 88 million euros in value. But what's so sad about it is that tangible memory of France's monarchy is just gone. Now, before we begin, feel like I need to explain a little bit of background of the French monarchy, because it is slightly confusing when we think of revolutions and various things. So I hope I've made it a bit more simple. So it begins in 987 with Hugh Capet and continues through to the Valois and Bourbons, who made France the most dazzling court in Europe. And then under Louis XIV, who's probably the most famous one because he's the Sun King, the monarch becomes theatre. And this is where the scale and just, rather extraordinary. He, builds Versailles. He commissions the Gallery of Apollo, which is where the royal jewels are kept. He uses jewels as a symbol of divine light. Literally, he means sunlight captured in diamonds, which is just extraordinary. A century later, we have Louis XVI and Marionette, which I'm sure many people have, heard of her apparent phrase, let them eat cake, which is the whole idea of the court's extravagant was just so vulgar. And so therefore in 1789, there was a revolution erupts, and in 1793, both were executed. And the crown jewels were seized and nationalized. Then comes in Napoleon, who crowns himself emperor in 1804 and replaces the royal birth with imperial ambition. His jeweler, Nitut, created new jewels, and this is going to be a big name that you'll hear in a bit. Like I said, there's a lot of things that go in circles with this talk, so I hope I explain. And then the monarch flickers again under the Restoration and the giant monarchy, and then we've got Queen Marie-Amélie and Queen Hortense, and then the final flourish comes in with Napoleon III and Empress Eugénie, and that's all about the refined second emperor luxury. So it's the Parisian elegance at the time. Very much the height, because I think France has always been very proud of being sort of the city of the arts and culture and design, and so this is kind of why it's a big deal. But in 1870, the emperor falls for good this time, and then in 1887 is when we have extremely famous sale at the Louvre, where they sell the royal jewels, nearly all, not quite everything, because the Louvre does keep the most famous diamonds, being included the Regent, Sancy, and the Hortensia, as relics. So that's really good. So, and then that also brings me on to the Louvre itself. And so this also, I feel like, it's quite important to explain. This began as a fortress in the 12th century, built by King Philip Auguste to defend Paris. And you can kind of see how all the roads lead to the Louvre. It's just so fascinating when you kind of see that. I mean, in the 16th century, you've got Francis I turned it into a royal palace. And then under Louis the 14th, it gained the Galerie Apollo. And then after the revolution, it became a museum in 1793. And today, under the glass pyramid, which you can sort of see in that image, it stands as the most visited museum in the world. Once a fortress, then a palace, and now a treasure house. So absolutely amazing. And if you haven't been, I highly, highly recommend it. It's got the most extraordinary collection, or including amazing Egyptian stuff, and it's just beautiful. Um, and of course, it's got the Mona Lisa and lots of other artworks, but it's just insane. Um, then we're going to talk about the actual jewelry. So the first three lots that was stolen was from this sapphire parure. A parure means a collection of normal things. In this case, it was a tiara, a brooch, earrings, necklace, and a belt. I think I forget if I get that right. And so yeah, so this sapphire parure was created in around 1810. Although some people say it's 1820, so it's kind of in between the two. And it was probably created for Queen Hortense, who was Napoleon's stepdaughter and Queen of Holland. The family claim, and that's why there's some rumors that, but it's not been proven, that it was a gift from Empress Josephine, and it might include the actual stones come from Marie-Annette. So is it? I don't know. It's very hard to prove when things have been reset or bought. So that is why it's rather exciting. It's Emperor style, and those deep Ceylon, which is Sri Lankan sapphires, are just, I mean, just look at the color. And to give you an idea, I've got a little video just to show you how it glitters. And isn't that just so beautiful? I mean, the color, absolutely extraordinary. And the idea of the sapphires apparently being the blue, you've got the diamonds being white, and then the blue have got a little bit of red. So the idea they represent France. So you can kind of see that, just absolutely beautiful. Then we've got who was Queen Hortense. She was represented in the Napoleon era idea of loyalty and legacy. She was the daughter of Josephine, a mother of Napoleon III. And it's through her that these sapphires become the personal link between the first and the second emperor. And then we've got Queen Marie-Amélie. And later the parures were passed to her, and she is the wife of Louis Philip I, who was known as the Citizen King, and it transformed from a symbol of emperor, and sort of uniting the Napoleon and the Orleans bloodline. So the point is, now you've got a bit of a bit of royal blood coming in. And it was passed through descendant to the Orleans family, and it is last worn by Isabel, the Countess of Paris, in the 20th century, and the Louvre acquired it from them in 1985 for a rumored 600,000 euros, which is equivalent of about 1.5 million euros today. So it's just rather amazing how it sort of bridges the empire, monarchy, and museum all in one. And then we go on to the emeralds, which are just the most gorgeous, yummy, yummy, yummy color. And just look at that, beautiful. It's just so utterly beautiful. The emerald belonged to Empress Marie-Louise, who was Napoleon's the first second wife. So a little bit earlier, I probably should have done this slide before these sapphires to give it more correct dates. But they were created by a very, very important jeweler of the time, Nitut and Fils in Paris. Um, it was commissioned by Napoleon himself to celebrate their marriage, and it was a diplomatic reunion as much as a romantic one. It was the idea of linking the France Emperor to Austrian's royal house. Um, so, and to explain, you got here she is, um, and she's rather beautiful. Marie-Louise was just 19 when she married Napoleon. The Peru, which contains a tiara, necklace, earrings, a comb, and a belt, were made with the most fabulous Colombian emeralds and old cut diamonds. And the design is the idea of the you've got it's just absolutely beautiful. So the idea of you've got the Habsburg green of Austria. So it's the idea of that. And then so and then I wanted to find a picture or try and find something about the make of jewelry, because I always think they're the silent people that people never really talk about craftsmanship. And Nictu is a huge name you'll hear in French crown jewels. And sadly, there's not much. I can't find a picture. So if you do, I would love to see. But they are the founding father of what today is known as chamois. So although chamois wasn't actually made until nearly 100 years later, the point is it's about, it was their workshop, etc. And their workshop perfected the emperor style, symmetry, the laurel leaves, classical restraint. It's absolutely amazing. And it was about excessive of Louis the 16th and Marie-Antoinette's Rococo taste, which is why it's like a complete contrast to sorry, I'll say that again. It's a complete contrast to the excessiveness of Louis XVI and Marie-Antoinette's Rococo style. So it's all about sort of elegance, if you think of it in that way, rather than being excessive. And there she is wearing the tiara and necklace, although you will notice something's wrong. They're rubies. And it's just a reminder that sometimes not all paintings are done by eye. Sometimes they were literally done later. So this is a portrait of Marie-Louise wearing the diadem of the design. And you can, as I said, the painter might have been working for life because it seems to be rubies. And this is why it gets really confusing, because while the Louvre had the necklace and earrings, the tiara is in the Smithsonian. And basically, so in the 1950s, Van Cleef and Arpels. So I will be talking about the sale of 1887, which is why it all gets very confusing with those loops. But the point is, in 1950, Van Cleef and Arpels bought this tiara, removed the emeralds, and reset it with Persian turquoise, marketing in New York as the Marie-Louise diadem. And it was required by a fantastic American heiress called Marjorie Merriweather Post, who gave it to the Smithsonian Institute in 1966, and it remains the museum's most visited jewels. But what I found really interesting is when I was looking up some research on this, the Smithsonian is currently closed. So the Smithsonian is in Washington, and it is the Natural History Museum there. And it's closed at the moment because of the US government shutdown. So one might ask why, and more to the point, is the diadem safe? Like, where is this tiara? If lots have been stolen because they want it for what it is. Maybe they want to complete the set. So yeah, keep this one safe. Who knows what's happened? One person I think who needs to get a mention is Humphrey Butler. Humphrey Butler in 2002. He is the former head of jewellery at Sotheby's London. And he was asked by an English family to sell emerald and diamond tiara made in 1820 for the Duchess of Angoulême. And so who was the daughter of Louis the 16th. So you've got, that's the tiara you see on the left. It's not the same tiara we've just been talking about, so don't get confused. Yes, there's the emerald tiara. Turns out the French royal family had a lot of tiaras, and that is one. And his success in selling it led to a private European collector to approach him soon after regarding the Nitut emerald Peru that has been stolen, and it's there. And through his negotiation, it was sold to Louvre for what they claim to be the world record price for historic jewels sold to a museum. I don't know how much for, so who knows. And there we've got the reliquary brooch, which was made in 1855 by Bath and Fills. And this is Empress Eugénie. Sorry, I've gone on to skipping on the thing. And look, just amazing colours. And actually, can we just pause for a moment? This really slightly annoys me, this. The photo on the left, which is the official photograph you get on the website, is white diamonds with slightly grey. So why is my photograph looking pink, yellow, orange thing? I mean, one level you could say it draws colour, and obviously you're not perfectly right, but yeah, it's like they aren't the same picture. Someone's photoshopped something. Anyway, the Ragulu, the Riluguri brooch was made in 1855 by Bath and Fills, official crown jewelers. It's a jewel of faith as much as fashion, and it's got a rather amazing, it's like a diamond cross. And it's kind of a tribute to Empress Eugenie's deep Spanish Catholic heritage. And always talk about makers, and we've got an image thanks to Philip Mould. And yeah, Bath's family have served France's crown jewelers for generations, from I think it's Louis the eighth, might get that wrong, right through to the second emperor. And you can see here there's a portrait of George's Frederick Bath, painted in the 1780s. But it's just rather nice to be able to show a kind of face, even though it's a portrait of the person who's creating these incredible jewelry. And so this is kind of like a diamond of devotion. It's kind of revives the 17th century Spanish devotion jewelry, which Eugénie is a Bourbon, and Bourbon is Spanish. And so just, yeah, rather amazing. And it's worn in this, it'd be worn on the center of sort of like a corset thing. So it's just absolutely amazing. But what is interesting is after the fall of the second emperor, Eugénie took this piece into exile. So it's one of the very few jewels that she actually personally safeguarded from the crown treasury. And there she is there, looking rather, fabulous. And she was so she married Napoleon III in 1853, and so she became the Empress of the French. And she's the face of the second emperor, so shaping fashion, and the visual identity of imperial France. And if I zoom in, I'm hoping this is sort of a way of zooming in. No, it doesn't really work. Oh, there we are. You can just see how fabulous, that look. She's wearing the tiara, and there's the crown just under her hand. So you can sort of just about, oh, go back. So you can see that. And there's the tiara. This is Eugenie's wedding tiara. So it was created in 1853. Um, and it combines pearls and diamonds in a strolling frolic design, once classical and modern, and reflects the optimism of early second emperor, dazzling, cosmopolitan, and entirely centers on Eugenie herself. And so it's rather beautiful, isn't it? And then this leads me on to the most exciting icon in antique jewelry. I just think she is just amazing. All you need to do is Google her name and you will see her amazing collection of jewelry and how she wore them. She wore them in the most bonkers ways. And I think, if anything, she's a huge inspiration. And who is it? It's Princess Gloria Texas. There we are. And she just looks absolutely amazing, doesn't she? I just think she's fab. Yeah, see, Princess Gloria von Thun and Texas what is wearing the diadem of Empress Eugénie on her wedding day in 1980. Gloria was also known as the punk princess of the 1980s Europe. Was famous for blending old world grandeur with rebellious glamour. She often wore this tiara at lavish parties and even paired it with a Marie-Antoinette inspired gown for her husband's 60th birthday party in 1986. The tiara itself had extraordinary history. It was originally part of the French crown jewels, as we know, and then it was one of the pieces that were purchased by Tiffany at the great 1887 sale, which I'm going to be talking about the 1887 sale and Tiffany. So there's going to be a little bits of circles going around. And so, yeah, it's just rather amazing when you think of it. But it wasn't until, so again, 1890, it entered the family collection when Prince Albert bought it as a wedding gift for his bride, the Archduchess Margaret Clementine of Austria, keeping it in the family for well, all the way up till the 1990s. But when Gloria's husband died in 1990, she was forced to sell many of the family assets, including the tiara, and it was auctioned off at Sotheby's Geneva in 1992, and it fetched around 935 Dutch marks, which is roughly 480,000 euros at the time, which is equivalent of nearly a million euros today. The buyer was a friend of the Louvre, and so donated it back to the museum. So after traveling from Paris to New York, from European palaces to German ballrooms, it finally returned home to France. So had a lovely little journey, and now it's been nicked. So if we know where it is, we need to know. And I thought it was quite important to also include this, that I went to the exhibition of this in 2016. So these are my photos. And museum also celebrated the legacy of their exhibition called The Spectacle of Second Emperor, where Eugenie's crown and pearl and diamond tiara was displayed on loan from the Louvre. Why I wanted to enter this is I will be talking about why the jewelry was not insured. However, what is interesting is when jewelry is on loan to another exhibition, that exhibition space, so in this case, Museum of Orsay, would insure that jewelry for that exhibition. So ironically, this is probably the one time it was insured. So we've got that little there. And this leads on to the tiara itself. So you've got the French eagles, and it's just absolutely extraordinary tiara. It was made in 1855 by Lemon and Bess, who were the official crown jewelers of the second emperor. And it's just rather fab, isn't it? And then we go on to, and we don't know how damaged it is or anything. And then we've got, like, everything is just, whoop, and then we're going on to, sorry, I don't know why it keeps going on to the, then we go on to the next one, which is this fabulous, my favorite piece in the X. This whole thing is this incredible bow. I think it's so beautiful, so wearable. It's just, to me, it's like the height of craftsmanship, because it's more gemstone than metal. I mean, if you just look how it looks like it moves, but doesn't look like it has any metal. And this is kind of set in predominantly silver rather than gold. So if you're saying it's going to be melted down for the counterparts, well, it's not really worth very much in gold weight. And so this was made around 1855, probably by Bess, but it's not been proven. And it's just absolutely beautiful, isn't it? And she probably would have had a lot of her dresses were made by House of Worth, and Worth is a huge name in the fashion industry, because it also has a nice link with Cartier, because they got married and etc. But yeah, Worth was just the height of jewelry at the time, and so I love the idea that that bow would have been attached to a Worth dress, probably silk, symbolizing both femininity and imperial. It's splendid. It's just beautiful, isn't it? And this is where I mentioned Tiffany. And you can see the image from the left and right. You've got the bow. I feel like I've zoomed in a bit too much. Oh, there we are. That's a bit better, isn't it? Yeah, so the bow. In 1887 sale of the French crown jewels, this magnificent bow was among the treasures that was purchased by Tiffany & Co. of New York. It was Charles Tiffany who personally dispatched agents to Paris, determined to secure the most prestigious lot. And in the end, Tiffany required 24 of the 69 lots, which included this bow. The images on the left, that black and white picture, is what Tiffany got. And they had an exhibition. It was swiftly shipped to New York, unrevealed that autumn, in a grand exhibition called The French Crown Jewels, a collection purchased by Tiffany & Co. on the Fifth Avenue, where the French imperial splendor was reimagined as American luxury. So just one beautiful. And who bought it becomes a bit of a mystery. And I'm very, very confused by the timeline of this, because that's 1887. And then we've got an image here on 1902, where around 1902, which by the way is in London at this point, which is Duke of Westminster is said to have bought this brooch for his daughter Lady Lettice Grosvenor's marriage to Earl Beauchamp. And so, and there she is wearing it. And then it's resurfaced again as an image, with being photographed, being worn. And then in this painting is her in 1983, by Countess Beauchamp wearing. And it was said to be, Tatler said it was on loan from Mrs. Ascot. So did Mrs. Ascot buy it in New York from Tiffany & Co.? And then at some point, did Duke of Westminster buy it from Mrs. Ascot, or was it always been in loan with the family? I find this really confusing. So if you know, please correct me, because I'm very confused by this one. Unless there's two bow brooches that are similar. Yeah, I'm baffled by it. What we do know though is it ended up back in the Louvre and sold by Christie's. So Christie's have it here. It was Christie's New York. So London back to New York. So Christie's New York in April, the 15th of April, 2008. And it was estimated at $4 to $5 million, and it got sold for 10.5, over 10.5 million US dollars, and it was required by the Louvre, and so it's full circle, Imperial France to global auction, and finally back again. So it's rather wonderful. Now I mentioned the sale. It was a sale. It's just extraordinary when you think what was sold. So to understand the jewels had left France in the first place, we have to go back to this date, this one big sale. It was the most controversial sale in French history. So after the fall of the monarch and the new Republicans decided to erase the symbols of royalty. So in May 1887, inside the Louvre itself, the crown jewels were auctioned off. 77,000 stones were dispersed, raising 6.86 million francs. But many of France's most iconic pieces, like the Regent, the Sancy, and the Hortensia diamonds, were thankfully retained and still remain there because they weren't ever nicked. And I mentioned that one of the most determined buyers was Charles Tiffany, and he got the 24th, the 69 lots. And I think that's rather quite, nice to think that he, effectively France's royal sparkle travelled across to the Atlantic. And yeah, so that and then we go and so I did two pictures of this because so many, but look, you'll start recognizing things now and you'll become a jewelry historian yourself. You're like, oh, I recognize that. This is where it gets exciting. Now, what did they leave behind? They left a lot behind. Like I said, mentioned earlier, the robbers could only get their hand in and only could get what they had with one hand reach. So the way things are displayed is quite laid out, so they couldn't have time to get anything. And you can see the emerald tiara that belongs to the Angoulême, Duchess of Angoulême, and here we are. And I thought it'd be really fun just so you can see what was not taken, and including the Sancy diamond, and the Regent diamond and the Hortensia. So the Regent diamond, which is the kind of the big one, the pink one is the Hortensia, and I got the video so I could sort of see the sparkles because I always think things need a bit of movement. The Regent diamond was the one that was set at the hilt of Napoleon's sword, and it's meant to be one of the finest diamonds from the Indian mine, being the Golconda mines. So yeah, it's also meant to be cursed. So did the jewelers have that much education and know this, or was it cursing them in their presence? I don't know. And then the Sancy is a pale yellow and once owned by English kings, and the Hortense is that beautiful peach-coloured gem, and it was named for Queen Hortense herself. And along them, which is my image on the right, is the emerald tiara that was for Duchess of Angoulême, and it's glittering proof that not every chapter of France's royal history has been erased. This does lead me on to, I've mentioned a lot of gemstones there. I kind of feel, because it's really important to understand where these gemstones come from, and so I don't want to ignore it, about the mining of the stones and the colonialism and the empires and everything. So very briefly, for a bit of context, the gemstones and gold in French royal jewels came largely through Portugal and Spain's colonial trade routes. This means that they were very much from Brazil, Colombia, and Sri Lanka. Indians legendary, the Golconda mines, were the source of all well-known diamonds until early 18th century. But around the 1780s, they were largely empty and then completely empty by 1830. So when we're talking about this time scales, because the gemstones that have been stolen, we are talking about 1810 to 1850s in date. And yes, of course, there was a lot of diamonds in circulation from India, but when we're talking about the diamond trade at this point of new diamonds of the time, it would very much be Brazilian diamonds because the Portugal had discovered not only the diamonds from Brazil, but also gold. So it was really, really coming in. And Spain were very much Colombia, and they took them to India. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a huge irony of Brazil. So Brazil was the discovery of diamonds in Brazil was around 1725, and it completely reshaped global supply. These mines were producing, as I said, gold and diamonds. But Brazil had no cutting workshops. So, ironically, many Brazilian stones were shipped to India to be cut by the traditional craftsmanship. However, a huge amount, and the ones very likely for our French royal crown, were went via Brazilian ships, so via the Portuguese route to Antwerp and Amsterdam, so Brazil, Brazil, Belgium. Oh my god, my brain's not working. But Belgium, and which is all still today is one of is Europe's main diamond cutting centres. Um, and that kind of leads me to another point, which is France and Belgium don't have closed borders, they're open borders. So, and that was one of the reasons they were very worried about with the French police, was if them trying to get, quickly recut, that might be where they're going to go. Emeralds came from Colombia, very best. And as I mentioned earlier, it was the Spanish who took it, but Spanish also were the ones who got sapphires from Ceylon, so Sri Lanka, and rubies came from Mondor, which is Burmese rubies. Mining was not, it's extremely manual. It relied on a lot of slaves and bonded labor. But I'm not denying it happened, and I'm not trying to romanticize it, but I do believe that the jewelers in Paris or even London, if you go there, didn't even know about the realities. They simply worked with what they got through the trade. They would have paid for it. It's not been stolen. It's all been bought. Just whether these workers actually got paid any money, I don't know. I can't comment on that one. I think that probably not. So very, 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 very sad. However, it doesn't excuse the exploration, but it does give context. And because these patterns haven't ended today, it's still very, very much happening today. It's just evolved. To give you an idea of why I'm saying it still happens today is, that fake Hermes handbag you bought, or something you've just bought because it was cheap, maybe a bargain from that company to Temu, Temu. Do we question what the welfare of those workers are? That's the point. You don't. We don't know how these workers and the craftsmen of behind it are being looked after. Are they being paid a fair wage? Is it, and that's the point. And I think these jewelers back then, they didn't know, they had no idea. They just thought that someone had discovered these gemstones, they got dug up, and they've made their way from across the world, and we're going to create something really beautiful with these stones, which they did. But that gives you a little bit of context. The Louvre robbery this October has not been an isolated event. It's part of Europe, a long European pattern of spectacle, jewels, and heritage heists. It's since 2000, so the last 25 years, we have seen the Millennium Dome raid in London, Antwerp's Diamond Heist, Gaff on Bond Street, Cannes Carlton Thief. We've had the Venice Doge Palace raid, and of course we've had the Dresden Green Vaults in 2019. All of these are highly, highly organized and deliberate cultural crimes. In a more surreal twist, the very next day, although apparently it happened just a few hours later after this Louvre heist, but it wasn't until the next morning when the security guard discovered is thieves have broken into the Monet of Paris, which is the French Mint Museum, and stole historical gold coins worth hundreds and hundreds of thousands of euros. And it's as if this entire country's culture security really is being tested. One night jewels, the next gold. But these are not opportunist burglaries. They are very well planned. They're international operations targeting symbols of European heritage. And they often involve teams who know exactly what to take and what to leave. So France, Germany, Italy, Belgium have all seen major museum heists in the past few years, and it's a chilling pattern, and it seems to be getting at a much faster pace in the recent years. This leads on to why would someone do it? If I was a collector and I wanted something unique, I wanted something no one else could have, because shopping the normal way becomes really boring when you have lots of money and you kind of have a thing and you want something no one else has. Um, it's kind of something very James Bondy about the collector going, I've got something right precious. Um, but that's exactly the psychological that drives this kind of theft. So, jewelry has a value, obviously with provenance a lot more, but gold can be melted, stones can be repolished, and their identity, their story is gone forever. Why do it? Why destroy something so historically important? Well, there are three reasons someone might do it. One is to obviously erase identity. So once a piece is being melted or recut, it becomes untraceable. It's no longer matches the photography and mortar point, the gemological reports to prove it is the same stone. I should add something about diamonds is it's very difficult to prove the origin of a diamond, whether it's from Africa or Brazil or India. And actually going to that point about African mines weren't for gold and diamonds. You're talking about 1850s. So these jewelries predate any form of mining in Africa. So yeah, so when I say about diamonds being the same origin, it's very hard to prove where they actually come from. Unlike a sapphire colored stone, sometimes you can go, the origin is, what it might be, whether it's Burma, Sri Lankan, or Colombian emerald, you can then actually do it. As for, unfortunately, diamonds, unless it's a type 2A diamond, and you've got the kind of dates here, you can go, oh, that's very likely Indian Gorgonia diamonds, because that's where they all were like that pure white with absolutely no carbon. Beautiful. So that's that. That leads on to, so we're going back to the three main reasons why you would destroy something so historically important. So one, I said about erasing identity. Two is about liquidation. So a diamond tiara is impossible to sell publicly, but melt the gold, remove the stones, and suddenly you have tradable goods that can quickly move through a global market. Third one is control. Some private collectors don't want to just display these pieces. They want to literally own what no one else can will. So destroying the original form in a way is the ultimate act of possession. The irony, of course, in that doing this, they raised the very magic that made these pieces valuable. So the craftsmanship, the provenance, and the story. Um, the global black market for stolen goods and jewelry is estimated by the FBI to be worth $4 to $6 billion annually. It's absolutely massive. It's much bigger than any illegal arms trade in the last couple of years. And make no mistakes, this is no small time dealers. They're organized networks, often with a pre-arranged buyer. France, being a highly political and symbolic country at the moment, is a particularly vulnerable. The theft of the royal jewels isn't just about profit; it's about perhaps even making a point. Um, but yet, let's just state something: no one was hurt, no one was killed. It was executed with the most chilling precision, which makes us ask, how easy would it be to steal from even the most secure cultural sites? Finally, for those who attempted to see this as a form of poetic justice or even a revenge for colonialism, I would say this: a colonial Robin Hood act is important to remember that these jewels aren't being returned to the country of origin. They have disappeared into private vaults. And this isn't justice, it's greed cloaked in history. The Louvre's stolen jewels were not insured. I was rather horrified when I learned that, and it really shocks people, but it's not unusual. Many national collectors can't ensure their true worth because the real loss isn't financial. So if you think of the Louvre, have got the most amazing, unbelievable amount of artworks and things. If they actually had their insurance on it, they would never be able to run. So this is the whole point: is they're worth so much that they are actually priceless. And you can't exactly go get a replacement value because you can't replace it. So, and that's the reason. So the official estimate placed it at 88 million euros. But how do you quantify history, cultural identity? The pieces are made by queens, called jewelers, symbols of entirely national craftsmanship. The true damage is loss of provenance and the continuous chain of ownerships and meanings, and the break in public access. Once an object removes from a museum, the story fractures. And there's also another loss as well, which is the public's trust. Once something vanishes from a supposedly secure national collection, it undermines our collections of faith. And so, you know, yeah, our faith in the institute, into the security, to look after our pieces of heritage. So these jewels weren't just treasure; they were literally little time capsules of past life. So, and that leads me on to lessons and things like what can we learn from this? Firstly, even the most secure institutes are vulnerable. This is a clear evidence of it. And protecting heritage isn't about stronger locks, it's about thinking smarter. We need a better display cases that are blast resistant, vibration sensors, immediate lockdown protocols. In some museums, they have decoy strategies and they rotate real jewels with replicas. That would really piss me off if I went all the way to Paris to see something and it wasn't the real thing. I'm pretty sure I would know. So that bit, I'm not that sure about that one. digitally, the we've got amazing technology, and even AI. Maybe AI can help in some way of recording every gem from 3D scans to high resolution imaging. Maybe there's a way to microscopically gem imprints have their own little gemstone DNA, or maybe have a serial number of microdotted somehow, so they can trade trace stones. So when if they ever reappear. The real challenge is funding. Public institutes can't protect what they can't afford to secure. And the future of this is involved collaboration between governments, patrons, and public through tickets, donations, and state reports. And it's why we're so lucky in the UK that we have a lot of free access to, for example, the V&A have got one of the best jewelry collections you could ever go and see. And so does the British Museum, also free, has a phenomenal collection and definitely worth going to see. It's much quieter than the V&A as well, so you can really appreciate it in a much more quieter way. And so, yeah, I feel like it's something like, what can we learn from this? And until then, what's lost, it reminds us that these stories, these objects really matter, because they're not just jewelry, are they? They're stories. And I did hear that one of Macron's plans for the Louvre. Sorry, talking so much, my voice is going. One of the plans with the Louvre is one of the security guards couldn't really attack the thief, because kind of one of the reasons why the security people in the Louvre is they are to make sure they protect the public, and they did do that. And actually, while we can be really angry with the Louvre and not looking after our amazing treasure, they did do a good job. They kept the public safe. They removed the public that were in the gallery away from the fair, and they did do that. The ones with the guns are the police. And you've also got to remember the Louvre is state funded. It means the money comes from the estate. So one of the ideas is that they want to do is put the police station in the Louvre, given that it's such a big, part of France's identity and the centre of Paris. And I think that is a fantastic idea, because they're the ones with the guns. They're the ones who have every right to shoot a intruder, and hopefully it will never happen again. It should also be mentioned that where are the jewelry now, the ones that they have, they have been taken to the Bank of Paris, and they are currently locked in a vault underground in the Bank of Paris. This also includes, interestingly, they have taken a notebook of Leonardo da Vinci. So that tells you that, which is worth, I think, something like 600 million euros or something stupid. Again, priceless, that they are taking this very, very seriously. So, yeah, I think with the Louvre, they have been complaining about security. They have been raising the question about we need to improve it. We're struggling with the amount of people. So I feel like we can't just point fingers at the Louvre. They are trying their best. It's more the government when it's under a very political strain at the moment. In the UK, we went through a time with the Conservatives of having many, many prime ministers, and France is having a very similar one of having lots of different head of government there, who are about dedicating the money. So they're in a similar position. They also don't have money either. So what is the answer? I don't know. But will they find the jewelry? I think they are really on the case. The fact that there are 100 detectives on this case. I quite like the idea of 100 priors all looking with their little moustache. They're going to find it. Well, good luck to them. And I really, really hope that we have a happy ending to the story. And that leads me to, thank you so much for listening. And I hope you've enjoyed this talk. I tried to keep it under an hour, and I realized it's a little bit over. It's kind of 1 hour plus the heist of 7 minutes. But Yeah, these jewels remind us that history isn't just written in books, it is worn, it's passed down, and sometimes stolen. So thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed.